It doesn't begin as a trap. It begins as something that feels right. A simple thought, repeated often enough that it starts to feel like truth. This is just who I am. At first, it gives you clarity. It helps you make sense of your choices, your reactions, your habits. It feels grounding, like you finally understand yourself. But over time, something shifts, quietly, almost invisibly. That same clarity starts turning into a boundary. You stop exploring certain paths, not because they're wrong for you, but because they don't match the version of you that you've accepted. You silence ideas before they even form, simply because they feel unfamiliar. You hesitate, not because you lack ability, but because you've already decided what kind of person you are. And without realizing it, your life begins to narrow. Not all at once, just in small, subtle ways. A conversation you don't engage in, a risk you don't take, a version of yourself you never give a chance to exist. It feels like you're being consistent, but what you're really doing is repeating patterns, repeating reactions, repeating a story that was written a long time ago. And the more you repeat it, the more real it feels. That's how identity works. It doesn't trap you by force, it traps you through familiarity. You begin to protect it, even when it limits you, even when it no longer fits. You'll tell yourself things like, I'm not the kind of person who speaks up. I don't do things like that. I've always been this way. And in those moments, it sounds like self-awareness, but it's something else entirely. It's self-restriction. Because every time you say those words, you're not just describing yourself, you're quietly deciding what you're allowed to become. That's the part that goes unnoticed. Identity feels like something you discovered, but in reality, it's something you keep choosing again and again in small, unnoticed ways. And each time you choose it, it becomes harder to choose differently. Still, there are moments when something doesn't align. A thought appears that doesn't sound like you. A desire surfaces that doesn't fit your usual patterns. A quiet pull in a direction you've never considered. And then, you pause. That pause matters more than it seems, because in that moment, there's a split. One version of you wants to follow the familiar path, the one that feels safe, predictable, known. And another version wants something else, something uncertain but alive. Most people ignore that second voice, not because it's wrong, but because it doesn't match the identity they've built. So they return to what they know. They stay within the lines. They keep playing the role. And slowly, they stop asking what they actually feel. Instead, they start asking what someone like them should feel. That's when life begins to feel heavy, not in an obvious way, but in a quiet, persistent tension, like something is missing, but you can't quite name it. Because you're no longer responding to life as it is. You're responding as the person you believe you are. And that gap between what's real and what's expected creates a kind of pressure that's hard to explain. Life keeps offering you possibilities, new directions, different ways of being. But your identity filters most of it out before you even notice. Here's the part that changes everything. The issue isn't that you don't know yourself, it's that you might be holding on to a version of yourself that no longer reflects who you're becoming. And without realizing it, you're trying to live a new life with an old definition. That's why things feel stuck. Not because you're incapable, but because you've been consistent in a way that keeps you the same. And in this case, consistency isn't strength, it's inertia. Real change doesn't come from finding a better label or creating a new identity to replace the old one. It begins the moment you stop needing to define yourself so tightly, when you allow yourself to act without explaining it, to explore without labeling it, to respond differently without questioning if it fits who you are. That's where something opens up. You start to realize that you're not limited to the patterns you've repeated. You are not confined to the story you've told yourself. You are not obligated to stay the same just because it feels familiar. You can speak even if you've been quiet. You can try even if you've held back. You can shift without needing permission from your past. And slowly, the grip loosens. Not all at once, but enough for you to notice that there's more available to you than you once believed. More ways to think, more ways to act, more ways to exist. And maybe that's the point most people miss. You're not meant to find a fixed version of yourself and stay there. You're meant to move, to expand,
to contradict your past when it no longer fits, because the moment you stop treating who you've been as a boundary, you start discovering how much of you has been waiting on the other side of it.